everyone, welcome back to Life Unpotted. Today we're joined by a special guest, Hector Marcel. Hector is the president of Three Jewels, which is a yoga, meditation, and enlightenment studio that in New York City that I actually started going to about a year ago. And Hector, it's funny because I've had an interesting journey with yoga, right? I think going to all these different studios in New York, and I had hurt my hip a little bit like a few years ago, and it was really discouraging. And it was just a very intense environment, getting thrown into like getting, I don't know, like ended up on like 6-story walk-up buildings. Like I've had so many interesting yoga journeys in Manhattan. But when I went to Three Jewels and I took Rachel Webb's class, it was, I think, the first time I felt like I was practicing in a way where I didn't have to be anything. I was practicing meditation and yoga in a place where I could feel just connected to myself, and in a place where it was clear that that was just all it was. It wasn't about being anything. It wasn't about practicing any sort of thing. It was just, she made it very clear. It was just about letting go of who you think you are, letting go of all the thoughts in your mind that are getting in the way of you being in that moment. And from there, I started going to Three Jewels often, and I really, really liked it. So I ended up finding your page through that, and I have just absolutely loved all of your content. I've absolutely loved Three Jewels. I've absolutely loved hearing about your story. So we wanted to bring you on the podcast because we're inspired by you. Honestly, we're inspired by what you've
Oh,
created. We're inspired by Three Jewels. We're inspired by your ability to approach this world with what feels like unwavering energy of hope, and letting people know that there is a way to be happy in this
yeah.
life. So just first and foremost, I know you're a busy guy. I know you're doing a lot of out there, a lot of impactful change. So thank you so much for joining us on Life Unpotted.
It's my pleasure, and to watch you two develop this podcast and see it having grown from, it was called something else before, right? It wasn't
Wildflowers,
yeah, it
yeah,
was
we
Wildflowers,
rebranded.
yeah. And then I don't know, you bring me back. I don't know. Did you see that? You bring me back. You bring me back to this. The root and source of hope begins when we're younger. And I know from my perspective, you're younger. I know from your perspective, you're your age, right? And many life things are coming your way. If you're in your 20s or in your 30s, there are predictable, boring things that life will throw at you, right? Guaranteed. But what the agency we have and the hope that I maintain is me relating to my 20 something year old hope and letting that be unwavering. I promised myself in my 20s I will not get old and cynical. Well, I
Hmm.
got old. No, no. like my body got old,
You look,
but my mind got brighter. Yeah. And so I don't know. I like the one of the things that kept my hope going. And thanks for saying all those things to about Three Jewels, because the same thing happened to me. I walked into that place by mistake, and 26 years later, I get to run the place with people like incredible Rachel Webb and many other teachers there. And the thing that we become serious about is don't make it serious. In other words, don't make it so structured that it's now you're a Buddhist, now you're a meditator, now you're doing yoga asana. If it doesn't serve your life, it's garbage. I don't care who sold it to you, the Pope, Virgin Mary, I don't care. If it's not turning on your life, it's garbage. And the problem is we made it into garbage. Yeah, because the thing, you can find this bliss that you found in that moment of yoga, you can find it in absolutely anything. I'll do a nursery rhyme later to tell you what I mean. But anyway,
I
thank
mean,
you for saying that.
yeah, and I think maybe I have so many questions and so many things I want to say, but maybe just to briefly get started so the our listeners can understand what your journey and how you ended up becoming president of Three Jewels. Maybe you could just take us back to when you were in your 20s. What were you going through? What was on your mind? And could you ever have imagined being in a place where you are now?
The complete opposite. Like I look at my life right now, I'm like, dude, you said you wouldn't do this. Like, look at me, I'm a guru. Look, I'm going for wizard. I'm going for
You're a first guest with a long
yeah,
beard.
yeah, exactly, right. Not only that, I'm running a spiritual center. In my 20s, I had given up hope because my heart was broken so many times to every church I went to every spiritual story I heard. That, like, I grew up in Argentina as a kid, and at the age of, and so my mom was going to be a nun. That didn't work, and then she she forced everyone to go to church, right? And so I remember my first confession as a Catholic. If you're in Argentina, you're a Catholic, whether you like it or not. So the whole ritual around religious practice is just so imbued in everyday life that you don't really have a choice, and it becomes not useful. At least that's how I experienced it. There's a ton of dogma and a ton of ritual in every religion, including Buddhism, and it's us humans making it a thing. So at some point, that thing lost itself. My first confession, I come home crying. I'm like, the dude tried to tell me to say things that I don't think I did. Like, he told me, what did I do bad? How did I hurt people? I'm like, I'm 10. I didn't hurt anyone, and but he
Mhm.
forced me to do 150 Hail Marys because he forced me to say that I didn't like my sisters. And I was so angry at that as a rebellious 10-year-old, or it was younger than 10. I sat there, and instead of doing 150 Hail Marys, I did 150 FUs to the priest. And I remember sitting looking at the cross going, F you, F you, in Spanish. That was my first act of rebellion. I went home, I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. So that's early days. Dogma, religion, don't want that. Moved to Australia, and then as a migrant kid, not belonging, not being able to communicate your language. On top of that, I'm a gay man, and so gay, that's not a thing in my generation that was supposed to be talked about. And then as soon as I thought I was ready to say maybe I'm gay, the AIDS epidemic started, and every TV channel was like, "You're the devil. You're the reason that the world will turn to crap. AIDS is God's message to the world." And so, as a young gay man in my teens, that's what my message is. So I it's not that I was closeted, because I don't mind being embarrassed in public, but I knew that that was so out of bounds. I couldn't talk about it. So I had a very internal conflict. Am I gay? Am I straight? Am I bi? Like most teenagers have, what's my sexuality, and can I experiment without feeling shame and so on. So, and then I fell in love with a girl, and she was the daughter of a Baptist pastor. So here I was at a Baptist church because she was so sexy, and I loved her so much. And I remember, like, getting baptized at the Baptist church, knowing that I had to say all the right things as I go underwater, but all I wanted to do is be with her. And later on, I discovered it wasn't that I wanted to be with her. Her best friend was sexy and he was cute. And so I had all this. That's me pre 20s in Australia as a migrant kid with all this confusion about what's me in life. And I had an old friend of the family. He was an older man. He was an educator. He was a teacher at a university. And I came to him about my gay confusion, my religion confusion, my career confusion, my feelings of inadequacy because I couldn't speak English, and etc. And I'm like, I'm scared. I'm forced to go to university now. I don't know what I want to do. And his advice was what got me to Three Jewels. His advice was, don't go to university. It's a waste of time. He's like a university teacher. And then, and then he's like, your best education will come from seeing other people living life. So get
Mm.
yourself a ticket, save up some money, go around the world. Don't Australians would go backpacking at the end of school, and so they'd go to England as a overseas trip. I'm like, there's nothing new about England. But he said, spend 1 year backpacking, go on the cheap, but your one job is to see who's happy and who's not, regardless their skin color, their culture, their language, their food type. It was the best advice I'd ever gotten. And so I went on this journey, um, renouncing religion, all organized religion's garbage in my mind in my 20s. I picked up Ayn Rand. I don't know if you've ever read Ayn Rand. She has this terrible philosophy, but it made sense to me because it was logical. She said basically the only people worth revering are the people that create stuff in the world. And by that she meant the industrialists, people that make inventions like the railways or architects who make beautiful buildings like skyscrapers. Everyone else is a leech sucking off of these people, feeding off of their creativity. And so she had a terrible philosophy. I'm like, oh, must be a leech then. And so I'm backpacking as a leech. But worse than a leech, check this out. Her philosophy says, worse than the majority of us who are leeches sucking off the intelligence of others and feeding with our wages what they've created, right? It's a terrible idea. Um, but I believed it in my early teens and 20s. Um, she said, worse than that are the brutes, the people that get things by force, the police force, the army, the dictators. They force the leeches to do
Mm.
their bidding to the poor industrialists. And worse still, beyond those horrible brutes, are the witch doctors or the religious leaders who are infecting people's minds with ideas so then they can rebel against it. So she had this horrible idea. And so I'm backpacking with those ideas in my mind. And it wasn't working trying to be a leech. It wasn't working trying to be a leech, hoping I would be an industrialist. Like I couldn't make it function. Creating my own business and all this, just life just brings problems, and it's your state of mind that fixes them or not. It's nothing to do with you're born a leech or whatever. But I didn't know that. I was too young. And then I came to a crisis point in my 20s. I was in New York, and it was really the philosophy that I met at Three Jewels that changed the trajectory of all those ideas and made me be really honest with myself and look inside and go, okay, drop all the philosophy, drop all the assumed directions. What am I really in this world? And what's really happening here? And who are the people in front of me? And it was Three Jewels that invited me to study the Eastern perspective on how mind and the world engage and what our experience of ourselves is. I didn't think then that I'd be here running the place. I was consuming content. I was learning the ancient Tibetan books and practices, and they were hard for a mind like me who was self-centered. Because one of the big practices is stop thinking about yourself only. you know he's like, there are other people who also want to think about themselves. Why don't you think of them and help them? I'm like, what? Anyway, I hope that wasn't too much info on how I sort of ended president of Three Jewels. It was a big mistake.
Not too much information at all. I think we all have a story of how we got here. And I think something that came through in that story was that we're all looking for something more. I think particularly when we are on this journey, when we're in our, early days of freedom, we start to question, yours was Ayn Rand telling you to be an industrialist. And I think, that's something that is baked into society, that if you aren't producing X, Y, and Z, you're not valuable. And that's something that I've had to unlearn. But I think it also coincides this journey of asking, well, why am I here? Is there something to achieve? And I think that for most of my life, I was looking to achieve my value from outside of me. And with Sophie and I's journey of questioning things, questioning, first thing that led us here was questioning my sexuality. That was in my mid 20s. So maybe I got a late start on things. But I think ultimately it made me see the world in a different way. It made me say, hey, maybe there's a different way to look at this world. Maybe this is the first step I'm taking to operate in this world in a different way with different values. So I am curious from your perspective, going in with this mindset of being self-centered, because we are in our 20s or maybe our entire lives if we don't become aware of it.
Yeah.
How was the process of learning to not think about yourself? Or, you had this thing against organized religion, going into Three Jewels and learning, the different philosophies, how was that impasse of thinking about yourself met with the idea of forgetting that who you are? Maybe you're everything.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear about that experience, because that's one that I think we are all constantly battling if we are not there.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry about the knocking. Someone's fixing the outside of our building, and they decided to be by my window today. Um,
It's New York City. It's
yeah,
unavoidable.
yeah.
We can make do.
It's such a. I think your question goes to the crux of what will ultimately serve us or not. Okay, the meeting of my assumptions that organized religion isn't working, that there are all these problems, etc. And I got to get happy. And if I don't get happy, it's a problem, right? And forgetting the reality that, like me, there are billions of other beings, and that's just the humans who are equally looking for fulfillment in whatever way it is, even if it's just food, right? Just forgetting that. The process of that transition from me focus to us focus, not they focus, which is a mistake Westerners do when they pick up Eastern philosophy. They're like, oh, I'm going to be a martyr and take care of everyone else. And that's just another excuse for you to shit on yourself. You see, for you to say, I'm not worthy, I'm useless, blah, 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 which are all the programs that are running inside of us. So, one big toggling that I had to do is this idea that serving others or having others in mind meant not me. So that was one of the things that I had to walk through, which is the thing that built resistance. And, I have a pet peeve about over modernizing ancient ideas that work. What I mean by that is you can get a tagline, do unto others. Just the Christians have it, right? Do unto others. And if you had the wrong mindset, if you didn't understand what that really meant or why that would function, you could use it as a further excuse to put yourself down for the sake of others. And then you're not better off. You're actually worse off for the planet to be a victim, piece of crap person who's always depressed and secretly doing this, but I'm a good Christian or I'm a good Buddhist, or, it just creates more horrible humans that create more problems, because then that person is going to have a baby and teach someone that. Yeah. And so I decided not to have babies. No, that's sorry, an aside. Um, that transition of me to us was based on logic at Three Jewels. Like Three Jewels now isn't the way it used to look like when I walked in there by mistake because I went to the wrong housewarming party. I went to a housewarming party. It was supposed to be the building next to Three Jewels. And I'm walking down the East Village one night, 1996, I think, or 95. And I'm like, oh, there's the party. And I walk in and it's a bunch of monks and nuns. And I'm like, no one told me it was a dress up party. And wasn't until I was halfway in the party, which was Three Jewels, opening night, Tibetan bookstore and tea house, that I realized I'm in the wrong place. So to get out, I was already too late. A nun had my hand and she had my housewarming gift in her hand. And she made me make an offering to a statue of Tara who was half naked, her boobs were out, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Like I'm anti-religion, right? And I'm in this place. But all that to say, the coincidence of bumping into Three Jewels at the time forced me into a place to study with Tibetan monks and nuns. It's not like it is now. I'm not a monk. I don't hold those disciplines as a monk or a nun. I have other disciplines that I keep as a layperson practicing this philosophy. So when you came to Three Jewels, you were taught like a monk in the 90s. And for me, that was a kind of blessing because I got to look at the books that the Dalai Lama themselves have to study, or all the monastics have to study, and it's based on logic and reasoning. I'll give you one example. Think of me or think of others. What's the greater benefit to planet Earth? There's one of me and 9 billion others. Who should my time really be invested in if I want a better world? Damn, that's a problem. It's not me. It's not one versus many, right? But then that also places us in the dissonance of saying, well, am I excluded? And then the texts themselves, this book called Bodhisattva Charavatara was written about 750 AD, I want to say. Um, that that was very detailed commentary to say you have to consider the nominal you as one of the many. If you find an ultimate source of peace and happiness in your being, that's better than you not finding it. And if you find it for you, why would you keep it to yourself? Why would you not want it for anyone else? Whether you like them or dislike them, they're still suffering. They're still going through the human condition. Everyone will go through some of these human condition givens, right? We're all aging. If you're lucky, you're aging. If you're lucky, you're going to get wrinkles. If you're lucky, you're going to end up in a nursing home. If
Hmm.
you're lucky, someone will take care of you when you poop your pants. If you're lucky, if you're not lucky, you're dead somewhere in the on the way, or have some terrible disease without anyone helping you. And that's reality. That's not like blah blah invention. The reality of the human condition, especially after traveling. I mean, I saw the most horrific things on those trips that fed my mind to be ripe and ready for the practices I picked up at Three Jewels. I mean, I saw a leper woman in Nepal. All of her limbs were half gone, and she's laying on the road, half covered with the sari, begging for food. Her friends had to crawl her there or dump her there to put a tin in front of her. And we're complaining about the banging on the wall in New York traffic. Like, the reality of the human condition is you're going to be born, that's a problem. You're going to have to grow old. If you're lucky, that's a problem. Along the way, you will get sick, guaranteed. Some illness will come to you, physical or mental, promise. Yeah, that's our condition. Yeah. And then you must let go of everything, you will die. I mean, and I'm not saying it to be depressed. I'm saying if that's their condition, does it have to be suffering? Does it have to be that
Hmm.
way? And if you have that question, is there a possible way that you could go through this life and not have to experience that as a terrible thing? Is there a different way of being in the process? And that's what the practice has become for me. Can you find bliss even in the last breath of your mom next to you? Can you find love there, or can you be angry? You get two choices. I got the last minute next to my mum, and I spent the last 3 months next to her as she withered her world to nothing, and her body became like broken and her breath was death breath and the rest. Do I have a choice? Do I make this moment extraordinary because there's a second left?
Hmm.
Or do I get depressed and angry and frustrated, which I was like, fuck, it's happened. It's happened to her. She can't even speak. I could be angry. I could be frustrated. I could be blah, blah, blah. But I have a choice in that moment. What would serve her most? Seeing an angry son next to her, shy, withdrawn, frustrated, or love her like, I want that stinky breath on me one more time, mum. Like, I know it's yucky, but give it to me. Like, I want one more breath out of you. And so for me, over the years, the practice has become lean deep and face on to all of the things we call suffering and watch them change. Watch them change. And I know we're talking about your move soon. There's nothing better than putting yourself in a new circumstance, because you're going to see what your natural habit is, and that's where you get to work your mind. But you got to know how to work it, really. I don't know if that helped you. So it was problematic for me to stop thinking about myself. I still think about myself, right? Like, I look at you two. I think of Oscar Wilde, right? This is he says, youth is wasted in the young, right? I'm like, I look at you two, and I'm like, I want to dump into you the 26 years that I've struggled to get this practice on, so you don't have to waste 26 years. Right? And in your next move, you can find an inner peace that you then radiate to everyone else, like you're doing on your podcasts. Imagine if that had staying power in the world. So anyway,
Yeah.
so that means I'm a little envious of you, yeah, your youth and your capacity and all that stuff. I'm still on Morse code communication. You're on podcasts.
Wow, I mean, that you said a lot there.
Sorry.
I was getting emotional, honestly,
Yeah.
and talking about I think a lot of what we try to do on this podcast is to try to understand the human condition, and I think us spending I spent 8 years in Manhattan, Daisy spent 5 years in Manhattan, and just in this life that we have where it feels like we all deny the human condition, and not only do we deny it, but we find misery in it. We complain, we get so pissed off when it's raining, we get so mad when our lunch doesn't come on time, we stub our toe and our day is ruined, and so much of our recognition that we've had through this journey, through meditation, through psychedelics, through multiple just sitting with the deep pain that I think we all have is the recognition that there's only love at the end of it. Like, there's only love at the end of suffering, and suffering is not anything more than maybe resistance of what is happening.
Oof.
And I think it's what I find, like, on our journeys, like, so we have this podcast, right? We talk about all this stuff, and then I go walk outside and I see people in their suits, and I just all of a sudden I'm back in my head of like, what am I doing? Like, am I missing the point? And then it's like this constant battle that I have with myself. So I think it's really helpful to hear your perspective as someone who's lived through all this, and now you're 50, 55 years old, and you have all this insight that I think so many people our age just don't have. And it's like we're constantly waiting, like you said, like, if we're lucky, we're gonna get that gray hair, right? Like, it's like, and I think about this all the time, you just don't know when your last day is gonna be. You just don't know, and it's just like, why do you think, or what advice, or how can we let people realize that you can't waste your life? Like, you can't waste it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a miracle that we're here. It's a miracle that I can pick up this microphone and see you through a computer that is somehow working. Like, what is any of this? And
Yeah.
yet it's like we feel insecure because we feel like people don't like us.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what is this bullshit? Why is it so freaking hard to people to understand that, like, none of this is all a beautiful journey, and that we have to just allow ourselves to see it? Like, why is it our evolutionary brain? Is it society? Is it consumerism? Is it the idea of ourselves? Like, what is it, and how do we help people to wake up? Because I'm sure realizing that, like, I'm sick of living in this world where everyone is freaking
Yeah, she's
not
sick.
seeing it. Woo!
No, that's awesome, Sophie. That I have so many answers. Okay, here is the thing. I loved everything you just said, and I'm trying to say, well, how did I click that? How did that click for me? How did that click for me? First and foremost, it is possible. You don't have to wait till you're old. It is possible to be a sage in this world, to be a woked up, a real woked up, not bullshit politically woked up or socially woked up or body image woked up. I think part of that is just bullshit masking. People that are super advocates of that sometimes come across as I'm saving the planet, but inside there's something wrong with you if you're rejecting half the world. So that's controversial, but fuck it. And so that's part A. Part B, sorry, can I say that on podcast? Intercorset. Intercorset. That's more formal.
Say whatever you want.
Okay. And so hopefully that triggered a bunch of people to wake up that there are other people around. One. Two, there are 20-year-olds who are really awake. And for me, Three Jewels has become the magnet for those people. Rachel Webb's nerd out with the idea that my mind in this same shitty reality can transform into beauty, and I can experience beauty where before I saw garbage. And if you're a New Yorker, you sort of do this naturally, right? You walk into the most disgusting subway place. Like, there's rats with the pizza and uh, it's the great equalizer for everyone. New York subway, right? Doesn't matter how good your makeup is. As soon as you get down to the subway in summer, it melts off your face, right? Like everyone else, right? It's a great equalizer. But I've had experiences in that shitty, smelly, crowded subway that makes me fall in love with the strangers that we share a cart with. I've had moments, thanks to my meditation practice and the study, where I wish I could just give away every happy moment I've got to the screaming lady, to the crying baby, to the angry mad person down the road. Like, it is possible if you're 20 or 15 or 30 or 70. It is possible in a moment to transform your mind into bliss. Heaven, in the Buddhist perspective, isn't somewhere outside of what your mind is projecting onto your surroundings. And if you understand that's the key to wake upism, to Buddhism, the key is what you put in your mind, what you habituate, what you return to over and over will manifest outside of you as your personal experience of wherever you're at. So, two people on the subway, one having a terrible moment with the sounds, the other person having a blissful moment with the sounds, nothing to do with the subway or the sounds. Everything to do with the stuff that person is pouring onto it consciously. Because I'm not sitting there, I'm having a terrible time and I'm going to make it pretty. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying sometimes someone yells at you with a bad intent and you're like, shrug it off. You're like, oh, poor guy. Other times you get triggered, even if they say nice things to you. Oh, I like your hair. What do you mean? I got no hair. What are you talking about? Uh, and so the key is number one, or out of all the things you said, number one, you can be whatever bloody age you are, and you can turn on this superpower you have to experience the world in the way you would like it to. And the way you would like it to, the Buddhists already know. It's happiness. It's not anything else. It's not hoarding material goods. It's not, all those things are bad strategies to get happy. Do I fit into society? Do I look good? Did I get the right job? Do I have the right title? They're all bullshit. The real thing you're looking for is, am I fulfilled? Am I happy? Am I sustainably happy? And so if you understand that that's what it is, it doesn't matter what it is we're doing. We got to train the mind to project a real happiness, a real fulfillment in whatever the hell the situation is. Death, dying, sickness, happiness, not happiness, like everything, we have to learn, train our minds to do that. And meditation is the key to do that. Meditation, you go in your corner, you work your mind, you create the happy connections, and then you just watch it when you go into your next subway. And next subway is like, I'm not happy. We'll go back to the meditation. What was that subway all about? Let's see if I could find happy. And you keep planting happy or goodness or fulfillment or whatever the hell you want to call it. Eventually, it will force itself out of you. Like, you can't stop bunch of seeds that have been put down in the ground, it will become a forest. And the same for our minds. So that's a couple of things. And then I've got two more things to tell you, but I think Daisy's got a question about what Buddhists say about what you said. Is suffering really has to be this way? Well, there's a list of how it could be different, but there's also an acknowledgement that it is this way now. If you do get angry, you have anger. You can't bypass it, right? It's not like, I'm going to be happy. No, if someone's punching you in the face, you're like, this must be good. No, it's not saying that either. Okay. So anyway, Daisy, you had a question. Am I prompting correctly?
You're prompting so well. I just wanted to acknowledge the reality of acknowledge the reality of when you are in a place it's and I'll say it from like my language of like you're disconnected from yourself, you do start to look at my material goods or my job title or the house or the apartment or the car, all of these things. So you start to get caught up in that. And I think for a long time I was caught up in that, maybe when I was quote unquote just not aware, but it becomes much shorter, those cycles, and you start to be like, oh, well, what have I been thinking about? What have I been consuming? What have my habits been? And it goes back to when you don't take a moment for yourself. And I think I'm so curious to hear more about meditation at some point in this conversation with training the mind of coming back to this point of it doesn't matter what your situation is, like everything is a concept on so many levels, but it's like you said, we all are just looking to find purpose or meaning or some sort of connection to this world. And a purpose in itself is finding bliss in difficulty. I feel like that's something that I've become more aware of recently of, we don't know what's going to happen to us. We don't know what the experiences are going to be. And a lot of our experiences that define our life probably have already happened to us. And I think that can either be encouraging or that can be very discouraging, depending on where you're at. And I think that, I just wanted to comment because there was just so many thoughts that were coming up. I know you have more to say, but I think finding bliss in difficulty is a purpose that we can all strive for, despite what we do, despite what our life purpose may look like externally. I think there can be so much overwhelm that I think coming back to that very simple point can bring a lot of relief. You can just switch that
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
light
And
bulb on.
the foundation is West. So Buddhists say this: everyone is exactly the same, including amoeba. From humans to amoeba are exactly the same, let alone all the different types of humans. We're exactly the same in these two things. We are looking for happiness, fulfillment, ease, peace of mind, whatever it is. We're looking to be satisfied. Yeah. And so we want that happiness, fulfillment, etc. That moves us. That's why we get out of bed. That's why we go to the job. And when we lose that, we stay in bed, we avoid the job, right? Or the partner or the food or whatever it is. We're seeking something all the time. Even amoeba are moving towards food. They're seeking fulfillment. we are also avoiding suffering. We know shit's out there and it hurts, and we're doing everything possible to not be in the firing shot, the line of that crappy situation. Yeah. And so, with those two things, which are true and necessary, and we should get more happiness and we should avoid suffering, right? Buddhists say that's true and that makes everybody equal. What's the problem? The thing that perpetuates the problem is an incorrect attachment to the kind of happiness we think we're going to get. And like you said, Daisy, we think it's the job. So now I got the job. I wasted 5 years at university. I got the degree. I got my job. I freaking hate it. 5 years, bye. And then, and then sorry. If you're lucky, you figure it out in 5 years. If not, you get a promotion and you got to wait another 4 years. Like, we're mad. We're crazy people, and then you're like, it's not this job, it's a different company. So you move companies and then 20 years go past. I know, because I consult to corporates and I talk to the top executives on how to not be jealous of each other and how to take care of other people. Like, my job is a organizational change consultant. I talk to CEOs and teams, and they've got exactly the same problems we are describing, just with more baggage. Right now, they've got a mortgage and 3 houses and too many cars and too many ex-wives or whatever. But anyway, so everyone's seeking, and Buddhists say the goal is correct. And the same for all my comment about all the woke people. The goal is correct. You should want no racism. You should want more peace. You should want no discrimination. You should want. The strategy sucks. The strategy is broken. It's not in the next job. It's not in the next promotion, because it wasn't in the previous one. It's in you, you bastard. What the hell? It's in me? What do you mean? The same for getting away. Did you notice? I'm not dating that kind of person anymore. And then all of a sudden, you're with that kind of person. Like, what? How did I get tricked? It wasn't the person. After the third go, it's you. Yeah. So the strategy is incorrect. Placing hope out in things outside of us is the big mistake, because there's nothing outside of us that our minds are not projecting concepts and ideas to. Example, your favorite piece of music, Daisy. What's your favorite, like, if I top band, top best music today?
I'll tell you a song I've been listening to, Walk Race Submarine by John Mayer.
Okay. I don't even know who they are. Okay. So, and I bet you any money that you try and force someone, other friends of yours, to listen to that and make them enjoy it and love it as much as you. And some of them are going to hate it. Some of them are going to go, what's wrong with you?
Oh yeah, I've been there.
Okay. If the bliss, if the joy that you experience, which is a true joy, it's correct, you love it, that exists. Don't doubt it. But if that existed inside the decibels of that music, everybody you put that music in front of must have the same experience, because the music is radiating the experience. The truth, capital T truth, is that feeling ain't nothing to do with the music. If it did, I must like it. As soon as you say their name, I'm like, yeah, I love them, because something in that is radiating, right? And that's not true. And that's that capital T truth, that you will never, ever, ever, ever find the fulfillment, the meaning, the trigger, the goodness in the outside object. That's a big mistake in our strategy. Yeah. The fact that it's not there is the whole teaching on emptiness. When you go looking for the bliss in that music, you come up empty. Fuck, it's not there. And then our next problem is, well, where the hell did it come from? Because it was real. So you can either doubt yourself, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm stupid. That's not true. That's also incorrect disliking. It's true you enjoyed it. It's true it was blissful, but it wasn't out there. Where was it? Fuck, it was me. And then it's like, how was it me? I didn't make it. I didn't wish it. It just happened. And that's the whole technology. That's the key to Buddhism. If you really understand it, it means someone, something placed something in your mind that labeled the experience of that music or those decibels as bliss. For someone else, it's garbage. For someone else, it's neutral. But for you, it's bliss. If you can figure out what produced that bliss in relation to decibels, then you can make more of it. And you can have infinite amounts of bliss if you understand, and towards anything, if you understand what in your mind is producing that. And the shortcut answer is, drum roll, give everybody bliss when you can. Think of others and wish that they just got happy, even the grumpy people, especially the grumpy people. Maybe you didn't get your promotion, but let's count your blessings. Why? Not because there's a magic in counting your blessings, is that if you keep a mind grateful, if you keep a mind in bliss, it must experience bliss. You see what I mean? It's like you're coloring the lens through which you see the world. And so the very first thing the Buddha taught, and I hate talking Buddhism because I also don't want people to become boring Buddhists. There's plenty of boring Buddhists. I don't want that, right? I want the real meaning behind these teachings, which you can find in any other teaching too. But the very first time the Buddha taught after their enlightenment, it is said, he taught the four truths. And he says, listen, dudes, life is suffering. Like, don't bypass it. Pain exists here. And then he taught that there is a cause to the suffering. Something made it happen. And what he taught there is like, you did it, you bastard. Your mind has it. You are the projector of suffering onto music notes. If I didn't enjoy the music, that was you. And then he said, but that you can reach bliss, you can reach enlightenment, and that is also caused. You have to produce the bliss for the next sounds to be blissful for you. How do you produce the bliss? Try and get bliss into other people, and your mind records bliss code, and then you're forced to have a blissful experience or people helping you, etc. I don't know if that's too coded. I hope it landed, but that's really a transformative idea for me.
Yeah. Definitely landed for me. I mean, this was, I think, a huge recognition I had like a few years ago where I was just like, why is it that I feel really good when I get that text, but I don't feel good when I don't get it? Like really trying to investigate that feeling of feeling good. And it's like the pen example Rachel used during yoga of just like a dog salivating at the pen, clearly the object in reality it's empty.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to ask your opinion on something and your so
Before you ask me that, Sophie, I want to know, Daisy, why aren't you texting more regularly? Go on.
that was from my dating days, dating in New York City, didn't get the text back. Daisy's working on her texting skills. So, where I find myself right now is on this interesting journey of like, so we both left our jobs, right? We both left our jobs because we realized there's more to life. And I now find myself, my mind's clinging to, so obviously we're in complete uncertainty right now. We are about to go move to a new city. We have to pay rent. We don't have any income coming in. We're just living off savings. And that fear keeps coming into the mind of, what's going to happen, right? And ultimately, what I realized, the ultimate fear is that I have to go work for somebody again. Why do I not want to do that? Because I'm so passionate about what we're building. I'm so passionate about this. But then as you're saying that, and I think about this a lot, I'm like, well, let's say I did have to work for somebody again. It's still going to be my own being of having to suffer in that situation. So, like, where do we draw this line of letting go of our preferences in the sense of recognizing if it's raining and my hair gets wet, that doesn't need to make me miserable, to somebody who's saying, I really do want to build this dream and this life I have. External things won't complete me, but if I'm going to spend any time and energy, I do want to have that creative expression. I do want to express myself, right? How do I do that in such a way that I'm not getting attached to the outcome? How do I do that in such a way of recognizing that I don't need to know right now how that's going to look? How do I do that in such a way of feeling comfortable leaving the job because you just don't know what that path is going to look like? Like this is a very intricate like thing in my mind of
But
like I have the clarity, then I realize my thoughts are telling me no, then I go, well, I don't have to believe those thoughts, but then I go, well, there is a rent check I have to pay, but I don't have to pay the rent check in fear. There's a way to make money. And it's just like, I guess a multiple question would be, do you believe that anyone can do whatever they want in this life?
mhm.
Part two, is most of fear a disproportionate illusion? Part three, what would you recommend to somebody who is in a position like us, who is pursuing their dreams and is faced with the societal pressure that says, hey, you left your job. What are you doing? You're
Yeah.
not going to be able to figure out. I guess that goes to question one. So a lot of stuff there that I'm currently thinking about.
So I'm gonna I'm going to be silly and I'm going to answer these questions depending on who's in my mind. Okay. So when parents are listening, I'm like, you should keep your job. It's really important. You should like absolutely look to work and just do this as a side gig. And then I'm going to say to my 20-year-old self,
We won't be airing this episode then.
and then I could say to my 20-year-old self, screw it, dive head deep, leap off the cliff. You're 20 now, you won't be later. Even if you have to pick up work later, you don't want to regret not having given it your all. So burn like the phoenix. You don't have to burn, maybe you'll fly. Yeah. And then I think the real answer is somewhere in between. Okay, because the more I studied these things, it's like, oh, there's this idea in Buddhism where you follow your calm, KHAM, which means there's something you're naturally excited about in life, something that gives you power, right? And maybe it's this for you, or something about this that triggers it. You know, I know for Steve Jobs, he took a calligraphy class when he was younger, and it was a waste of time for everybody, but it was thanks to that calligraphy that our Macs have these really cool fonts. You know, so it became useful later, but at the time it just looked like no, who does calligraphy? Everyone's doing computer stuff, you know. So what I'm saying is maybe it's a podcast, but maybe there's something deeper than the podcast. Maybe it's something about sharing, and be inquisitive. Don't be definitive about it. Always be open to the discovery of a deeper layer of what gives you meaning. So my advice is like crash and burn as much as you can in your 20s. Like really try stuff, because if you have to become boring, you can become boring later, but maybe it'll be like a calligraphy class where instead of boring you come up with a brilliant idea because you took a chance when you're younger. So but what I said by it's somewhere in between is, as an ethical person, I can't bear the thought of other people having to pick up my pieces. So in my 20s, when I went backpacking, I worked 3 jobs. I saved up a ton of money. I didn't ask parents for any support. I didn't ask friends for any support. I just worked my ass off. And then my round the world trip was on me and within the limits of what I could afford. And I was happy to take the risk of eating rice if that's all I could eat for 2 weeks. And I'm fine with that because I'm in Paris eating rice. Or, I'm in, and that was fine. And that was brilliant. And that's awesome. And I hate rice, by the way. And then probably because of that trip. No. But what I'm saying is like, the mind will give you problematic choices to force you into a bad strategy. What I mean by that is many people come to Three Jewels, they study with me, they go, oh, wow, I want to be free and blah, blah, blah. Should I let go of my job? And if the teachings of reframing your mind to find bliss in everything are true, it really doesn't matter whether you're in a job with that you hate or love. Your job is to train your mind to find love. In fact, it's probably better to be in a shitty job because you're going to have to work harder and way more motivated to find love. Yeah. But the Buddhists say, oh, lean into your passion, the thing you're good at, the thing that gives you fire, because you'll go faster, because you'll click and it'll turn on for you. And so it's a problem. You're absolutely right. It's a problem for us. And the way you process the problem is practice. That is the practice. The practice of, oh, I should get a job. No, I shouldn't get a job. Oh, I should have security. No, I shouldn't have. They're both bad choices because it's not in the thing. The fulfillment we're seeking is in the experience. You see what I mean? Like it's never in the two. There's always a third choice, and that third choice in Buddhism is called the middle way. The middle way between this not having the thing I want and this does have it. That neither of those are true. Someone is loving a job. Someone found creativity in the previously boring job that you didn't want. Someone found real meaning, and they're not dumb. They're human seeking happiness just like you. And so I know I'm not giving you a definitive answer, except that there's something calling you to this bliss. Don't half-ass do it. If you're going to do it, look at your finances, look at your rent, go, I've got 3 months leeway, 6 months leeway, 1 year leeway. I'm going to risk like going to the casino. I'm going to put all my money on red until October. Right. And then I know in October I got to go get a job. Or if I don't have to get a job, maybe this kicks off. I will find new answers by then. I think that's the best I can tell you. At least that's how I worked my life up until now. Everything that's in front of you is an opportunity for you to reprogram your mind to find meaning, let go of the attachment that what you think you're going to find the job that's going to make you happy. You think the podcast, have you not had shitty podcasts? You think the podcast is the thing that gives you happiness? There's something else at work. The podcast is just a way to get to that something else. The job can be that too. Don't dismiss it, because there's relationships I've found at work that are deeply meaningful, even though I hate the fact that the grand majority of humans are sitting behind computers in desks, probably mostly facing the same way, but they don't think so, because you and I think we're facing each other, but I bet you were both facing east or something, like in an airplane. Anyway, that's an aside. But, like it kills me that that's how we spend human life. Life is suffering. Yeah, yeah. You'll find it in the podcast too. But something in us is making it suffering. Oh, you can change that. Yeah, you can. Well, then you have to work for it. How? Make other people happy. And you're doing that with a podcast.
It's nuanced, right? I think a really interesting thing that we learned from Michael Singer in the surrender experiment was that a lot of our answers are found in the things that we naturally want to resist.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of what you said, like looking at what's in front of you as a vessel, because anything tangible is never going to be your purpose. It's always going to be kind of how you see it. It's never what it is, but it's how you see it. And I think that's kind of what we associate with the podcast. That's something that we are talking about, but it is tricky because it is something that is tangible. So it can't necessarily be a purpose because you never know what it's going to turn into. So you can't look to it. So
Yeah.
I really like the philosophy though of looking at what you resist the most and saying, I'm gonna dive into this even if I don't want to, because it's what's in front of me, it's what I have to do. And maybe there will be answers there. And I think there probably can be answers in anything that we do if we're able to sharpen our mind to see them.
Yeah.
And
I,
I think that's the goal.
I agree.
I have a lot of thoughts.
Let's hear them. We got
Okay.
minutes.
Well, it always makes me think of when Alan Watts talks about the bus driver who recognizes it's just a game and the point is just to drive the bus. Like you can be just as happy driving the bus as you are if you're on your yacht in Miami. The other night I was thinking really about like the person who has things they always want, right? You have all the money, you have the flexibility, you have everything. And guess what? I have that right now.
Good.
Do I not have the do I not have the fear come up? Do I not have the anxiety come up? Do I not have what the hell, who am I, what am I doing in this life come up? And it's that recognition, and it's like we can say this so many times of nothing outside of you will make you happy, but it's like right now I'm getting it again. Like I just it's like nothing will make you happy. Like if the podcast is a vehicle for me to express myself, if I go become a kayak instructor in Austin, Texas on the side, can I just express myself there too? Like looking into that resistance that we have when we do have to do these things because we think that thing is going to make us unhappy. If I have to go work at a coffee shop, that's a beautiful opportunity to talk to people. So it's just like, yeah, and I just like surrendering to it all. I think it's really amazing when you realize that no matter what you have, even if we have a Spotify partnership, even if I have all the money coming in, it's you're gonna have to sit with those same thoughts every single day. So it's just like the answer isn't what you're doing. The answer is never what you're doing. Yes, that doesn't mean we shouldn't follow our heart, but we should follow and chase those things without attachment.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like it was never about those things. Those are going to fade. Those do fade. Everything is fading. So I think that takes a lot of fear away from me of saying it doesn't matter what I'm doing. It's just a matter of if I'm expressing myself, if I'm acting out of love, if I'm acting out of a true sense of entering into that bliss, that recognizing that we are all on this journey together. If I spend my life working at a job and I all I do that day is give love to the person next to me, isn't that the same thing I'm doing in the podcast?
Yeah.
You
If
know,
you do that, you see that's the important thing.
if
Or are you sitting there hating every moment of the job? That's
yeah.
the
So
difference.
That's the difference, and I don't think we can do I don't think people realize that things don't make you miserable.
Yeah,
Like,
no, we don't. But we have an ingrained habit, and they say from lifetimes before, so it's not your fault. It's like been there a long time. The habit of putting onus on the outside thing is what forces us to get all worked up about why things don't work out for us. Because we,
do you think earlier
yeah,
sorry.
no,
Do you think early humans or whatever we were had a better recognition, I guess, before things got institutionalized and before religion and all
no,
these
no.
thoughts, or did we've struggled this from day one?
Yeah, no, Buddhists are pretty clear. Like there's 2,500 years of literature of people like you and me that became monks or nuns or commentators on these practices, and they're all describing the same core dissatisfaction and attachment. And it's about the bread, or it's about the field, or it's about the yaks, or it's about Instagram. It makes no difference. The human condition is garbage if you think, if your strategy to get happy is to collect things outside of you, or even collect relationships. It's if it's internal, if it's understanding that my mind is having an experience, and what caused that experience, that is where the game is at. If you want more blissful, here is the shortcut, okay? And it sounds weird to hear. If you want more blissful experiences in your life to come up later, busy yourself with making sure every interaction we have with anyone includes trying to get them to have blissful experiences. And so if you understand that, because that's what's seeding your mind to be biased for bliss, you see, you obsessing daily. I hope this podcast lands in the ear of someone today. You just fantasizing this, right? Someone's listening to this podcast. Someone's like in a really hard spot, and a word I say next is gonna brighten their mind, and they're gonna change the way that they feel, and they're hopefully gonna get up off their depression and shift a thing. If you just fantasize about that, like we did just now, we now have that in our minds as a possibility. I don't know if it's going to reach someone else, but the wish that it reaches someone else is in me now, because I said it, I conceived of it, and it's in my consciousness. That's replicating, multiplying. They say twice every day it multiplies. Seeds under the ground. At some point, I'm going to find my body on a seat, on a chair in the corner, maybe getting a little depressed. And a thought will appear way more powerful than the one we just made now, because it's multiplied over time, and it'll wake me up to purpose. And I won't know where it came from. I won't remember the podcast, but it's in my mind. It grew, it multiplied, it ripened. And suddenly I feel energetic, and I'll misunderstand. I'll think it's because I'm watching TV, that show. Now I've got to get obsessed with the show. It's not the show. It matured in our own consciousness because we planted it there before. And so what you do is you get busy planting and stop thinking that the fruit must come tomorrow. I was nice
Mm.
today. Where's my fruit? No one plants a tomato in the ground and says, I'm having salad tonight. No one, no one in the world would do that. You don't go plant apple orchards and go, we're going to sell cider tonight. That's bullshit. And yet we think that if I do yoga this morning, this afternoon, I'll be blissful. There's a short side effect of that, but really, the yoga, the meditation, the practice, can you find in your heart a real, genuine wish that everybody gets everything they want? And then you must be forced to eat that fruit, but not tonight, later. You'll be surprised by it.
Wow, that really hit home. I
Good.
think that is incredibly sage advice, and I think that is an incredible place to leave this conversation.
Nice. Yeah, leave me now that I gave you the good stuff. No.
No, in all seriousness, Hector, this has been a phenomenal conversation. So much wisdom in this conversation, and we're so grateful that you were able to be here with us today. And Sophie, do you have any last parting words? Um, 'Cause I know you always do. I feel inspired. I feel inspired as well.
Good.
I just feel like the answer is so simple, but we overcomplicate it, and it's like thinking that your thoughts, thinking that these bullshit things that are coming up are who you are, and it's just like it never is. And it just shows the power of Hector showing up, and it's just like Hector making that decision at some point in his life that he was going to plant that seed, and now you feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
It's alive.
it, it's here, and you. like you were saying before we started the episode, it's just like you made or maybe it was during an episode, you made a promise to yourself that no matter how old you get, you weren't gonna get old in the mind, and it's just like you feel that,
Yeah.
and it's really contagious, and I think that if this imagine a world where that was everyone, like, imagine a world where you were aging and you were like, "Wow, how lucky am I?"
Yeah.
And I don't have to get miserable, and I don't have to suffer, and I just think that, like, it is so helpful to just talk about this stuff, to hear you share your insight, to bounce ideas off of each other, because 'cause you're always the student, you're always the teacher, right? So, thank you so much. I think there's so much to talk about, like, I feel like this wasn't long enough, so we'll have to have you on.
I'd love
We'll have to
to.
do a round 2.
Once you move.
Yeah, we move, like, tomorrow, so
Yeah.
well, maybe you'll be in Austin, but we'll be visiting New York, so I know you travel a lot, but we'll have to figure out
I
something,
was
meet
just
you in
live on
person.
Dallas radio for the second time. So for an
Mm.
hour, I was talking to Texans. Yeah,
No, there's
yeah.
you have
Cool.
some good feedback. Austin's a fun place. Have you been?
Never, never, never. Just the
You should go. It's funky. It's fun. It's a
okay.
good
Cool.
time.
I'll take out. Thanks, and I'm happy to come on again. And you're doing great. Like, please keep doing this because it does connect and inspire minds who are
Mm.
looking, always looking. Right. The answer is inside each of us, and it's so
Mm.
simple we miss it. So you got to keep returning, returning, returning.
Well, Hector, what I think we do is I think we plant seeds in this podcast within ourselves to each other. So it got right in tandem with the Life Unpotted logo.
Yes. Ooh, it does.
It does
There
a
you
little too
go.
much. Well, thank you so
Well,
much,
thank
Hector.
Cool.
yeah, thank you so much. And it's Hector, to our audience, you want to let people know where we'll put it in the show notes, but anything you want them to know about Three Jewels, where they can find you,
Oh,
anything
sure.
coming
Yeah.
up,
Look,
future training.
Three Jewels is a place where people nerd out on remembering that, oh, it's something in us. And so it's a volunteer run nonprofit. We give away classes free or by donation, or we take your money and we give it away to others just to keep the place going. But we study these philosophies in depth, we practice it in depth, and we do trainings and retreats and a whole bunch of things where people get to internalize and go, oh, I actually understand it a little deeper. And so if
Mm.
people want to connect this, a course coming up soon, my meditation teacher training, which happens once a year, is where people dive deep into these concepts and then learn the mechanics of meditation so you can get excited about the real purpose of meditating. There's nothing interesting about meditating, okay? It's what you do to your mind. You're preparing the soil in your mind, and then there are techniques to do that better. And so I'm passionate about passing that information on to people so they can take ownership of their minds again. We all can do that. So you can check it on my bio or on Instagram, which is at wakeupist, or at 3joules.org. You'll see all that stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Hector, for joining us, and until next time.